Hello and welcome to this week's College Planning Tip of the Week. I'm Nancy Steenson with Steenson College Coaching. With me today, as always, is Jack Wang, and we have a special guest today, my friend Lauren Joyce with Joyce College Consulting. Lauren is from California, so I have some questions or a question for you today, Lauren, because sometimes I get students coming to work with me who don't live in California, but they think they'd like to apply to a university in California. Can you share with us some thoughts as far as what parents and students might need to know if they're applying into the California higher education system from out of state?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me today. So in California, we're lucky enough to have two really strong public school systems. We've got the UC system, University of California. It has 9 undergrad campuses, and we have the Cal State University system that has 23 campuses. They are quite popular. Many of them are quite popular with out-of-state students. I'd say the UC system is more popular. UCLA, Cal Berkeley, UC San Diego come to mind. And then on the Cal State side, we have 2 flagship schools, Cal Poly, which is a polytechnic university in San Luis Obispo, and San Diego State are probably the most popular with out-of-state students, with the others ranging in popularity based on specific programs. So I will say something I've learned in helping my students apply to these schools. There's not a lot that is consistent among them, even within the school systems, right? So we know now that the UC system, and I'll speak to that in a second, is now test blind. They're not even looking at tests for admissions. But beyond that, there's not a lot of consistency, even how they calculate grades, all sorts of things are different. Same goes for the Cal State system. So not a lot of consistency. So the UC system, it varies by selectivity greatly. We've got UCLA and what we affectionately call Cal locally, but is known as Berkeley. They're down in the 10 to 14% acceptance rate, all the way up to Riverside at 65% and UC Merced at 87%. We get a lot of out-of-state applicants for, I'd say, six out of the 9, maybe 7 out of the 9 schools. It is the bar is set higher for out-of-state students, and a couple of things are changing. So one is the bar is set higher already to begin with. The GPA bar is higher, et cetera. Of course, the cost is quite a bit higher. Those UC schools can run an average of $69,000 for out-of-state students, right? So about the cost of a private school. But also Californians very recently have raised their voices about how difficult it is to get into these universities for California students. And so it was, and it is right now, that about 25% of UCLA, UC San Diego, Cal are out-of-state students. Over the next 5 years, that is going to be reduced to an overall cap of 18% across the 9 schools. So some are already below that, but some of those more popular schools are less so. So it's going to be a little bit harder for out-of-state students to get in. The Cal State schools, we do get some interest in, again, Cal Poly and San Diego State. Beyond that, Cal Poly is about 15% from out of state. San Diego State is right about in there. It reduces beyond that for the other campuses. And there's no measure right now to reduce that any further. So it's going to be a little bit harder, which is bad news for you, but good news for the Californians who feel like, they're paying into the system and they'd like a little bit more, a few more options for California students. So speaking of cost, a couple of things you should know as an out-of-state student. The UCs are about 69,000, as I mentioned. The Cal States out of state are about 50,000, but some of those Cal State schools are part of what we call WUI, which is the Western Undergraduate Exchange. So if you're in about 17 or 18 of the Western US states, you may have an opportunity to pay about 150% of in-state tuition if you meet certain criteria. And of course, that criteria varies by school, but it's something to look into if you're interested in some of the Cal State schools. talking about applying, so the applications are very different for the two schools. The UC application is kind of a bear. It is a large application, meaning it has, of course, the regular, demographic information, where did your parents go to school, all that good stuff. But it has an expanded activities section. So if you're doing the Common App, which of course most of your students will be doing, they have 10 spots for about 150 characters to describe your activities. The UC application has 20 spots and it has 350 characters. So if you're going to apply to the UC schools, I say start with that application, because then you have this nice expanded activity section, which you can then just edit down for your Common App. It also has 4 personal insight questions and a tip on the 4 personal insight questions for out-of-state students who might not know this, or even in-state students. They're known as UC essays, but they are not really essay questions. They're more like interview questions, and that's how you should approach them. They want to know what, who, when, how long. It's not sort of that, really get deep and introspective on those. The nice thing is when you finish those, you have some information then to put into some supplemental essays. So I say start with the UC application completely, then move on to the Common App.